My name is Bill Purcell, and I am the director of the Institute of Politics, and it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum this evening for what I believe will be an incredible conversation. This particular evening comes toward the end of a semester of offerings here at the Forum and in the Institute of Politics, and while we don't often reflect upon it, I would take 1 second to acknowledge that this has been a semester of incredible offerings within our fellows and their study groups. And this particular evening would not have been possible without a very special study group which was conducted this semester on the subject that is in fact at the core of what we're going to talk about tonight. The person who led that study group is a fellow I hope known to all of you here, and it is really because of her that this particular evening was possible. She is, and our guest and I have agreed, she is an irresistible force. You simply cannot resist when Rose Styron asks you to do something. Doesn't matter whether you're in Europe or Mexico or another planet, you will simply pick up and go and do whatever Rose Styron tells you to do. And as a result of that, we are here together tonight, and I want to thank and recognize Rose Styron for her very special work. Tonight also would not have been possible without great friends and co-sponsors, as is often the case, but this is a special co-sponsor that we have here this evening. I get the opportunity to bring forward a friend, again, I think, not just to the Institute and to Harvard, but to many of the people in this room. Marilee Grindle is formerly the Edward S. Mason Professor of International Development at the Harvard Kennedy School, but she's also the director of the David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies at Harvard. She is someone who, like the program tonight, I think will prove, helps people connect all of the things that are important in our world and helps them understand why they connect and why politics is so important. So it's my pleasure to bring forward my colleague, Dr. Marilee Grindle.
Welcome and bienvenidos. Welcome to a conversation about art and politics. The David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies is very proud to be the co-sponsor of this event at the John F. Kennedy Forum, along with the Institute of Politics, the Harvard University Latino Political Coalition, and the Harvard Kennedy School Latino Caucus. I want to thank Bill Purcell, Director of the Institute of Politics, Rose Styron, an Institute of Politics Fellow, Noelia Rodriguez, and many others who have made this evening possible. It's a very great pleasure to have with us this evening Carlos Fuentes, a literary lion and a legend in his own time. He's a historian, a diplomat, an essayist, the author of numerous screenplays, dramas, short stories, and most famously, novels. I think The Old Gringo and The Death of Artemio Cruz are his most well-known novels here in the United States, but there are other major works that are also well-known, Where the Air is Greener, A Change of Skin, Terra Nostra, The Hydra Head, and The Campaign. His 1985 novel, The Old Gringo, was a U.S. bestseller that was turned into a film starring Gregory Peck and Jane Fonda. Imagine. Carlos Fuentes is a citizen of the world. He has called Panama, the United States, Argentina, Chile, Great Britain, France, Switzerland, and I'm sure many other places, home for parts of his career. But Mexico is his enduring home and the place that has resonated most in his writing life. Carlos Fuentes is a modern person who clings to tradition. He tells us that he writes with pen, ink, and paper, and then asks, do words need anything else? Perhaps not, but that's something I think many of us have lost touch with. His relationship with Harvard is also strong. In 1987, he was appointed as the first Robert F. Kennedy visiting professor of Latin American studies. And we have, over the years, shared him with Princeton, with Brown, with University of Pennsylvania, with Columbia, and with Cambridge University. However, I'm very proud to say that he was with us before 1987, and he has been with us since then, and remains a very good friend indeed of Harvard University. It's an honor to have you with us, Don Carlos. Thank you for coming. Engaging Carlos Fuentes in this conversation is Maria Hinojosa, who is well known to many of us from a wonderful program on PBS now, and where she is the senior correspondent. And she's also very well known to us as anchor and managing editor of NPR's Latino USA, a weekly program focusing on news and culture in the Latino community. She is the author of 2 books published in the last 10 years, quite an accomplishment with all the other things she's been doing. She has won numerous awards for her contributions to the media, among them the Rubén Salazar Award from the National Council of La Raza. She has been recognized for her coverage of issues related to women and Latinos. She has been recognized as one of the 25 most influential working mothers in America. She has all of my admiration for that, and as one of the 100 most influential Latinos in the United States. In 2001, she won an Emmy for her coverage of the September 11 attacks in New York City. Her list, the list of honors that she has received over the years goes on and on and on. I want to thank you very much, Maria, for your presence and turn over this evening's conversation to you. Thank you.
Me da un placer, pero un placer. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros.
No, gracias, María.
Don
¿Vamos a hablar en
Carlos.
español o en inglés?
No, in English, but I was just kind of warming you up there. And also because Mexicana to Mexicano, it's just really an honor. But we have a lot to get to. I was just writing all kinds of issues, so there's a lot, and I also want to try to get to a side of Carlos Fuentes that perhaps sometimes we don't hear, which is a little bit more of the personal, too. So, and I know you have questions as well, and somebody will be cueing me when we're going to go to the audience, because I don't have a watch, because I said, I don't want to time this. Para empezar, we have just witnessed a couple of weeks of extraordinary North-South relations in terms of the Obama administration going to Latin America, going to Mexico, Hillary Clinton on the border, Janet Napolitano on the border, the America Summit. And I just want to quote 2 things that you said and wrote, and then I want to get your sense, Don Carlos, about where we are now, an overview of where we are now. So first, one of your quotes is that what the United States does best is to understand itself. What it does worst is to understand others. And then you wrote, rightly or wrongly, many Latin Americans have come to identify the United States with opposition to our national independence. So after these couple of weeks, in relation to those perspectives, where do we stand?
It's a radical variation. I would no longer say that today, in the sense that President Barack Obama has engaged Latin America in such a open, brilliant, I would say, creative way that many of the conceptions we have of the past have vanished suddenly. I hope they don't come back. They might come back because the history is not a nice history. It's a difficult history. But I think that President Obama, who says, well, I was 2 years old in the Bay of Pigs invasion. He's a young man. He comes with new ideas. He doesn't have to follow the prejudices or the knee-jerk reactions of anybody before him. It is a novelty, and I think he has proven it at the Port of Spain meeting, where he engaged very freely, very sympathetically, listened to everybody listened to him. There are going to be differences, of course there are going to be differences, but if we state the differences in a civilized manner at the level of dialogue, without screaming, without demagoguery, maybe we can get a few things done and others not. But such is life, I wouldn't say in the tropics, but in diplomacy.
But I have to say, I'm always looking for that eternal optimism. So when you say, Don Carlos, let's hope it stays that way.
Don't take me, Don Carlos, I feel very old.
Okay, Carlos. De cosa de respeto, pero está bien, Carlos. So it worries me. You say, look, it could go back. I mean, with your sense of history now, do you think it could go? I mean, is it like we're, yeah.
Things can always get worse. You know, the history of Mexico, the relations of Mexico and the United States are very illustrative. We had a very bad relationship in the 19th century. There was a war between our two countries. We lost half our territory from California to Texas. In the 20th century, there were two military operations in Mexico ordered by President Woodrow Wilson. Things changed really when President Roosevelt conceived of another kind of relationship, not only with Mexico, but with Latin America, but most especially with Mexico. In 1938, the foreign oil companies disobeyed a sentence from the Supreme Court of Mexico. President Cardenas felt obligated to nationalize the oil companies. The British and the Dutch left. Roosevelt said, no, I stay to talk to Mexico. He was a very keen politician. He knew that the World War was coming and that he needed an ally south of the border. In Mexico, there were tremendous sympathies for Hitler and the Axis. A very strong pro-Axis sentiment. Why? Because the Germans were against the Americans. It was as simple as that. And Roosevelt engaged Mexico in such a way that we became good friends of the United States ever since. We've had problems, of course, but basically there has never been a major problem between Mexico and the United States since the Roosevelt administration.
So in that year, right around that time, you were living in Washington.
Right.
And I thought about what you wrote, because you were saying that at that time when Mexico nationalized the companies, suddenly you were picked on.
I was very popular at the school at the beginning, and that day everything changed because there was these great headlines, Mexican Reds steal our oil. So the
and everybody knew you were Mexican.
Yes, everybody knew it. So the sentiment against me was, I mean, everything changed then, it changed again. But for that moment, and with those headlines, and with many sectors in the United States asking really for an invasion of Mexico, for a punishment against Mexico, and Roosevelt acting in another way. But this was felt very strongly. If you read the press at the time, the cartoons, they were very, very punishing against Mexico. But finally, out of this crisis came a much better relationship between Mexico and the United States, because we had the great fortune to have our two greatest presidents of the 20th century coincide, which is unusual. We had Franklin Roosevelt and Lázaro Cárdenas. And with these two presidents, it was inevitable that they should come to an understanding. They were two brilliant men.
The reason why I thought about it, Carlos, was because there is a sentiment that probably a lot of the students here who are Latino, certainly those who are Latino, who are Mexicano, there is, and you know this well at this point, in this country, there is an anti-Latino, anti-Mexican, anti-undocumented immigrant, or in their terms, anti-illegal alien sentiment. And it's important to remember that this is not the first time that there has been this. No. And that's why I wanted to ask you, okay, so you went through that when you were being attacked because you were Mexicano. And what's your sense of what's happening now with Mexicanos in this country?
Well, what I see is that this is no longer a WASP nation. It is a nation of immigrants. It is a browning nation. You're getting immigrants not only from Latin America, but from all over the world, which is proper to the United States because it was built by immigrants. And let us recall that the Western Hemisphere was once an empty continent. There was no one here. The first peoples came from Asia, through the Bering Strait probably, or through Polynesia into Peru. But first there were so-called Native Americans who were not native because they came from somewhere else, and then you got Africans and Europeans. It's always been a continent of migrations, of people mixing and creating a different culture, a culture of cultures, finally a mestizo culture, I would say, in Spanish. And this is going to happen in the United States as well. And if there are reactions against this, well, they're going to be overcome by reality. The reality has been up till now that the United States needs a workforce that comes from Mexico. Probably now it won't have that workforce because the crisis will open up work for American workers and displace Mexican workers, and the border will be in a way closed, which creates a problem for Mexico, which means the ball is now in our court. We've been living very happily through three factors, which is migrant workers who send a lot of money back to Mexico, oil, which has had high prices, and tourism. All three are falling. Mm-hmm. All three are falling, and Mexico has to find a new way forward that does not depend on tourism, workers, and oil.
Because essentially,
What?
you know, well, Mexico, I mean, people have a sense of Mexico, again, as being this poor, third world country, and the fact is that one of the richest men in the world comes from Mexico. How is it possible that Mexico cannot satisfy its workers?
We have very bad distribution of wealth. Very bad distribution of wealth. That's it.
And
there's a lot of wealth in Mexico. It's badly distributed. We need to break up. Both on the left, the unions, and on the right, the corporations, all the corporate culture of Mexico, and make it more democratic so that it'll be a better distribution of wealth. The wealth is there, it's badly distributed, now it has to be well distributed, or we're going to be in trouble. There is a great challenge for Mexico, Maria, a great, great challenge, which is to employ its workforce, given the fact that all these factors that I've mentioned are going down. We now have to employ the workforce. I think we could take a page from Roosevelt and the New Deal and create a new deal for Mexico, or a social contract for Mexico that'll put Mexican workers to work. We have to renew our infrastructure. We need new ports. We need urban renewal. We need to build schools. We need bridges. We need highways. We need 1,000 things that we have not done for several decades. So that was the time to have a real program giving work to millions of Mexicans who will not be able to migrate and work, or who are not going to get money either from oil or from tourism. So it's a great opportunity. It's a challenge. It's difficult. It's dangerous, but it is a great opportunity if we use it well.
In your book, Happy Families, you write that the central character, the father, and he basically finds out that everybody estaba cerrándole el ojo, was doing a little wink, you know, esta comunicación. And the moment when I saw you, I winked, and I was like, "Ay, my God, I just winked at Carlos Fuentes bad."
You're not a character in my novel, Maria.
I'm not a character in your novels?
No, don't wink at me.
But here you just say, as far as his boss was concerned, all of the workers were corruptible. This was the central premise at all levels in Mexico, from the government to the company, from the grocery store to the communal pasture. Everyone is corruptible. So when you think about the progress that you know is possible in Mexico, and yet you're writing a book that says, you know, essentially.
But I would say that of any country in the world.
So,
The corruption exists. It's universal. It's not private to Mexico. It is universal. Every country has corruption. The problem is, do you have laws that punish the corrupt? Do you have laws that denounce corruption? That is the important thing. And in Mexico, as we advance down the democratic road, we're going to have better laws. The PRI system in Mexico meant that the president of the republic held all the power over the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. Now there is a difference. The president does not hold power over the judiciary or over the legislature. So we now have a possibility of the judiciary in Mexico coming forth, and it is doing it, with laws against corruption and to punish the corrupt. So it is a question of democratic advancement in Mexico. The more democracy you have, the more corruption will be punished. It won't disappear, because I don't know a single country in the world that doesn't have corruption. But the way you deal with it, how you punish it, is the real question.
It's so interesting because, you know, I was born in Mexico City, in La Colonia Narvarte, and I was raised in Hyde Park, where President Obama used to live until he moved to the White House. And when I was a kid growing up, there was always this kind of sentiment that que México era tan corrupto, that Mexico was so corrupt. And when President Nixon had to resign, it was like, finally, Mexico is not the only corrupt country out there. But there is an image, no? There is an image.
There is an image, and it's a deserved image, I think, but it's not a unique image. Let's put it that way. If you're going to delve into corruption, you can do it anywhere. The question again is, how do you punish corruption? How do you avoid corruption? We're on the way to solving that. It's a long way to go, I admit, because corruption has been, since the colony, since the Spanish colony, it has been there. I think the Aztec Empire was quite corrupt as well. So there is a long tradition of corruption in Mexico. Now the question is, can democracy eradicate corruption? Or at least limit it, because I don't think you can eradicate corruption anywhere in the world. But you can at least limit it and punish the corrupt people. At least you can do that, and we're on the way to doing that.
When you hear, Carlos Fuentes, people talking as they have over the past several months, that that Mexico is at a tipping point. It's a government that's about to fail. The level of crime. I mean, that there was so much. The issue of drug violence has been going on for years, and all of a sudden, in the past month, it was splashed all over the headlines in a very alarmist way. It's going to cross the borders just like those illegal aliens, and we're going to have all that problem here again.
But there wouldn't be Mexico would not offer drugs if the United States didn't demand the drugs.
So when Hillary Clinton went and said, we have...
Of course, it's the first time that they recognize that this is a co-responsible affair, that the United States and Mexico are partners in this problem. It is not a Mexican problem. Mexico creates fiendishly a problem for the United States. No, it's a problem created basically by American demand for drugs, and American sale of guns and armament to Mexican drug lords. So the question is for our two countries to get together and see what we can do together. It's a very difficult problem. It has no easy solution, but it's the beginning of the solution to realize that it is not a unilateral problem, but a bilateral problem.
So when you hear, I was quite surprised to hear this, that former president of Mexico, Cedillo, along with two other former presidents from Latin America, said legalization might be something that is very important to look at.
Well, this is a very important step. It is a declaration by former Presidents Cedillo, Gaviria, and Cardoso of Colombia and Brazil. And they asked to start a process of legalization through marijuana, which is the simplest drug of all. But you begin somewhere. I don't know where it can end. It's extremely difficult. I know that in my lifetime, I'm going to see a full legalization. I don't see a legalization of hard drugs in this country. Public opinion, the Congress, the White House itself would not tolerate it. So we have to take little steps, little by little, and fight it at the ground level and see that the sources, which are the ones I have mentioned, the demand from the United States is somehow controlled or lessened, and the sale of guns to Mexican drug lords is also controlled. So there are two problems that demand diplomatic bilateral action between the two countries.
So your thoughts on the Obama administration. One of the criticisms that I've heard as I've traveled around the country, surprisingly, through many, many states, is actually people saying they want President Obama to be more radical. From Mexico's perspective, where does he stand? What does he need to do?
I've always insisted that every citizen in the world should have the right to vote in a US presidential election. Because it affects us all. It affects us all. And if the past election had been worldwide, Barack Obama would have been elected by 80% of the world's population. Forget the American electorate. He's so popular all over the world. There's so much hope pinned on him. And he's a man of the center left. He is not a radical. He's not a conservative. He's a man who works in the center left, which I think is a good position from which to govern.
What does Barack Obama, what would you most like to see, Carlos Fuentes? What would you like him to see that would completely transform the way U.S.-Mexico relations have been in the past?
Well, I think he's doing it already. He's doing it already. He's admitting that the relation is a bilateral relation, that the ills that are heaped on Mexico are heaped because there is demand in the United States, and that we have to solve these problems together. And I think Hillary Clinton's visit, Barack Obama's own visit, point in that direction, that we are going to work very closely, the two governments, the two countries, to try to solve these problems on the only basis they can be solved, which is through a bilateral relation between Mexico and the United States.
So Barack Obama is, he's a mixed race man. He identifies as, as an African-American man. Mm-hmm. But again, thinking about my own relationship, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, in Hyde Park, but essentially an African-American community. And whenever I would go back to Mexico, you know, mi abuelita, ten cuidado con los negros. Be careful of the black people.
Of course.
And I would always be like, abuelita, you know, don't. When I moved to New York, ay, ten cuidado en el Bronx porque hay muchos negros. And I'm like, how did she even, she got that image from movies that were made in this country.
Well, you go to Bolivia and the white people say, cuidado con los indios.
But it's specifically on the issue of a black man being in power. And I wonder about Mexicanos and their own racism, which exists and is not often talked about. Mexicanos' own, I would say, a certain blind spot for the African presence in Mexico. Anything there? Anything will change?
No, the African presence in Mexico was so minuscule. It was during the colony, and these were slaves brought to the Gulf and Pacific, where there's some strains of black culture, but it's disappeared. It's hardly nothing. It's less than 1% of the population of Mexico. We have very few blacks. Mexico cannot be cannot have racial prejudice against itself, because we are a mixed race country. Mexico is 80% mestizo. You and I are mestizos. We're not Caucasians. 10% perhaps are Indians, 10% are white Europeans. So where do you get the racism? It's not racism, it's social inequality. It's social prejudice, it's social injustice. That is the problem of Mexico. It's not racism, because we would be, as I say, we would be disqualifying ourselves, since we are 80% a mixed race nation. What is abundant in Mexico is injustice, and this is what we have to take care of. Not racism, but lack of justice for the majority of the people.
So, what kind of music are you listening to these days, Carlos?
It's curious because I've just been writing about it. I went with my wife to hear Rigoletto at the Met, and I remember that the first opera I ever heard was Rigoletto at the Colón in Buenos Aires, because my father took care of my literary and political education, but he had a blind ear for music. He said, I'm like Napoleon. For me, music is the least uncomfortable of all noises. So my mother grabbed me and took me to the opera and made me an opera fan. You know, I know several operas by heart. I can sing all the roles and the music.
You know, I'd be careful. I'll ask you to sing.
Don't do that. You'll ruin our interview. They won't forgive you for that. I won't forgive you. But anyway, the fact is that we went to see Rigoletto, and I was writing about the fact that I can give words to literature, obviously, to painting, to sculpture, but I cannot give words to music. Music is the one art that escapes my verbal possibilities. It exists unto itself. It is a magic that drives me out of my own mind, in the best sense of the word. Me vuelve loco, but it is in the best sense. And I can only embrace music. I've been listening to the Beethoven quartets recently, which I think is one of the apexes of music, that you cannot go further than he did. And then also, you see, from a literary point of view, I say, well, isn't it wonderful that Beethoven was not well understood at times? That people walked out of the first, when the quartets were first performed, people went out and said, the man has gone crazy. What does this mean? Today we accept it as part of the canon, but as a revolutionary part of the canon, because they're very disquieting, the quatuors. They bring in something totally new all the time. And when a musician gives you something new each time you hear him, that is great music. Or when you sing a Gershwin tune, that's also magic. But I have this extraordinary relation to music as the partner of my writing. I am writing with words, but I am yearning to hear music, to understand something that cannot be said by words. The extraverbal dimension of my life is called music. So you see how important it is, because if I were reduced only to language and writing, I would be very unhappy, very sad, very dismal in my life. And music is a great, great purveyor of the magic of the world, the unsaid magic of the world, which suddenly becomes a quartet by Beethoven, and I can hear it, and what a privilege.
So opera, classical.
Yeah.
What else?
Oh, I love all kinds of music. I love rancheras, boleros, Gershwin,
And any
jazz.
modern, lots of jazz. You like jazz?
I like jazz very much, of course I do.
Any modern Mexican guys? Café Tacuba.
Yeah, they're great. But you know, I'm old-fashioned.
So that it doesn't.
No, I stay with Agustín Lara. Huh?
Oh, okay. And in terms of one of the things that's so fascinating about Mexico City is that there is such a vibrant intellectual, cultural life at every moment.
Yeah.
So what's the thing that you think is coming out of Mexico City, urban culture, that is cutting edge, that's interesting, that's different, that people haven't heard about, that captures the moment that we're living?
You know, I was recently at the book fair in Paris, where Mexico was the guest country. And the condition for being invited as a Mexican writer was to be published already in France. 47 writers were invited. Only 36 could make it across the water. But to have 47 writers from Mexico translated into France means that there's an extraordinary literary culture in Mexico. When I was younger, there were only two great living novelists in Mexico, Agustín Yáñez, no, three, Agustín Yáñez, José Revueltas, and Juan Rulfo. So the field was very open to innovation and to joining the club. Today it's impossible. There is so much going on, so much writing going on, and it is a proof of the cultural effervescence of the country, of the quantity of things that are happening and how the culture is moving. And why is the culture moving so much? And not only in Mexico, throughout Latin America. The vibrancy, the presence of the culture is enormous. And for one, amongst many other reasons, one reason, the failure of the politics, the failure of the economic systems. There's two big failures. We've had a politics that fails us constantly. One ideology is replaced by another system of government comes, another goes. They never realize, they never open a true road towards political progress. The same is true of the economy. One day we want state intervention, the other day we want market capitalism, the next day we want the state to come back, and it's a muddle. Whereas the culture has a continuity. In the case of Mexico, from the Aztecs and the Mayas to our own time, there is a cultural continuity. It has never failed us. And I think that is what people adhere so much to the writing of literature as the one value they can prize, they can hold on to. It's a very important fact. I'm not proud of it because I wish I were more proud of my political and economic life than I am.
So in the book, Happy Families, you have one of the characters, because again, people have a kind of romanticized image perhaps of certain parts of Mexico, but what we love about your writing, Carlos, at least in this book, is that you put us into Mexico City. And the daughter, essentially, I want to talk about two things about her character. But first we'll start about the fact that she is, well, I remember when I was going to my parents' house in Cocoyoc, outside of Mexico City, and there were like some cameras around, and we were in a taxi cab, and I said to the taxista, ¿Qué está pasando? He goes, ahí están haciendo un reality. And I said, what? And he said, oh, they're doing a reality show. But there was like a term in Mexican Spanish, un reality. I was like, huh? So the character in the book is consumed with, she's essentially said goodbye to everything, and she's consumed with the computer, the cyber, and this reality show. So Carlos, you're saying that there's a cultural continuity, but you're also saying at least there's a real void as well. Are you worried about this? Where
No, I think all these things become part of the culture. I'm never amazed at a novelty in culture. I've seen too many novelties come, some go, some stay, and they become part of the culture, and then we accept them as part of the normal profile of a culture. And I think TV is, of course, here to stay. We have to fight against bad TV and be in favor. But here it's a dramatic case in which a young woman who has isolated herself from social life because she has been hurt by that life and by men in that life lives only through the adventures of reality show and these strange things organized in which you come from the Mexico-U.S. border to Guatemala, and on the way you get killed, raped, and that's part of the show. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm just going to read from the description of the daughter. She felt revulsion when she remembered being cold as a statue, remembered being pawed, pinched, insulted on the Mexico City, Mexicali, or Mexico City, Merida flights. She didn't blame anyone but herself. Her body was the offender, good-looking, desirable, corruptible. She alone was responsible for inciting macho lust. She punished herself.
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of...
You know, Mexico City, the subway in Mexico City is the only one where men and women travel in different carriages.
Yeah, I know, my daughter saw it.
They can't go together. I have a character in another novel who fancies women. He's a lecher. And since he's not admitted to the subway, he disguises himself as a woman and goes in to pinch women disguised as a woman.
Ay, qué malo.
Qué malo, ¿verdad?
Ay, mira, se sonríe. About that, you know, I did just do a documentary about women power in politics.
Yeah.
I had the extraordinary pleasure of interviewing President Michelle Bachelet of Chile, going to Rwanda, which has the highest percentage of women in power in politics than any country in the world. So from your distance, Carlos Fuentes, tell us about how you see machismo now, where we are, what we need to do, what we can do, your words of wisdom.
Machismo is a fake disguise. It is the least manly men are those who brag about their machismo. You see right through it. It's become so commonplace in Mexico that you laugh at it. And it's abundant, nevertheless, because it's a way of not admitting that it's really women who rule us. It's la mamacita who rules. It's the wife, the keeper of the flame at home. And the macho struts like a gallo, like a cock, and says, I'm the he-man, and he isn't really. Of course, not all Mexicans are machos. There are many who are level-headed people, professionals, workers.
And there are good machos too, no?
No, good machos in the sense that they're male, but not machismo, which is a disease. It's not good. And in that sense, I think that, you get, in Mexico, there was a great feeling against women in the past. Women should not be in politics. I had an uncle who was a general in the Mexican Revolution. When women started wearing pants, he would go to Chapultepec Park with a fuete, how do you call it?
Un fuete?
When the thing military used.
The whip.
And hit them in the ass and say, put on your trousers. Why do you dress like a man?
Oh my
God.
God.
It was this sentiment, which
sounds
is
like
gone.
Kabul.
It's gone now, it's gone. There's very different women are in politics. Some of our most outstanding politicians are women. Women are in government, women are in the professions. It's a radical change from the immediate past of Mexico. So one can be optimistic about this.
So there could be una presidenta mujer en Mexico.
Yes, but the only one who could be president dresses like a Tehuana, Beatriz Paredes. She had to change her dress or Mexicans would be frightened to have such a gorgeous, wonderful, valiant woman, but dressed, in a folkloric fashion. And she would never dress in a business suit. It's impossible. It's part of her personality to dress with typical costumes. She's a very brilliant woman, Beatriz Paredes, extremely intelligent, and she would be a great president of Mexico if the PRI comes back to power, which it may.
Which it could also happen.
Yeah.
But you want to do some image consulting. Okay, another part of Carlos Fuentes that we didn't know about. We're going to open this up to our audience. So those of you who want to ask a question, please come to the mic. You should identify yourself. And be aware that if you don't ask a question, I'll cut you off. In a nice way.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas
tardes.
tardes. My name is Alvaro Santana. I'm a student here at the Harvard Sociology Department. And my question is, I would like to know what are, in your opinion, the conditions that transform artwork, especially
That transform what?
That transform artwork.
Art.
and especially a literary book into a classic, and also what is the role of politics in this particular issue. So to put it in a different way, why are we still reading the Iliad, El Quijote, Madame Bovary, being applied to Latin American novel? Why are we still reading La Muerte de Artemio Cruz or Cien Años de Soledad? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I think a literary work stands because of its literary value, not because of its political message. Let me be clear about this. I think that in literature, what counts basically is the quality of the imagination and of the language. And whatever the politics, I mean, you can have a very reactionary writer like Céline in France, or a Stalinist like our dear friend Neruda in Latin America. But it's finally the quality of the work, the quality of the imagination and the language that counts and that remains and creates a tradition which permits a new creation, and a new creation which depends on the validity of the previous tradition. So all of these things work that way in favor of Cervantes, who had no idea that he would be read today. I don't think that Cervantes ever imagined that in the year 2009 people would be reading Don Quixote. And no writer thinks of posterity. Writers think of writing the book, giving the book to the press, finding a public or not finding it, being faithful to the work as a work of art, and what posterity gives you, who knows? Stendhal was practically unknown. Only Balzac praised him. He was not read until Henri Martineau rediscovered him in the 1920s. So you have these strange adventures of literary success, literary fame, which are difficult to explain. The same year in the United States, you have a huge bestseller called Anthony Adverse. Huge success by Hervey Allen. Same year, Faulkner publishes Light in August. Thank you. Anthony Adverse is a huge bestseller. Nobody reads Light in August, probably 1,000 people, if that. Over the years, nobody reads Anthony Adverse, and we all read Absalom, Absalom, and Light in August. So you cannot prejudge these things when you write. You cannot say, now I'm going to write an immortal work or a classic. You can say, now I'm going to write a huge bestseller, because you know the recipe for that. You follow a certain recipe, it's like cooking a souffle. You would write it, it will have a success, and then it'll disappear. But if you're really faithful to literature, you're not worried about the success or insuccess. You're not worried about the posterity of the work. You're worried about the work itself. And the work itself, let me add, with one little detail, which is imperfection. You know that Michelangelo, I don't know if it was the Moses or, yeah, I think it was the Moses, chipped away, no, to make it imperfect so that it would last. The knee of Moses is chipped away by Michelangelo, and if the work had been perfect, he would have been very unhappy as a creator. And that happens always. You have to leave a door open through the lack of perfection for the reader or the spectator to come. He or she that will read the book or see the statue or hear the music in years to come must realize that these works are not closed to them because they are perfect. Perfection is death. One must have a great degree of imperfection in the work of art. At least that we can be sure we can get, because it's not difficult to make imperfect works. Yeah.
So
Actually,
just a quick follow-up.
do we want follow-ups? Or because no, I'm sorry, you can't do a follow-up. Sorry, you need to sit down. And we'll take your question.
Very
I'm sorry.
harsh.
Sí, pero es que hay muchas preguntas, porque
Bueno,
usted es
bueno.
muy famoso y popular. Yes.
Hello, my name is Lorenza de Icaza. I'm here a student at the Kennedy School, and I wanted
Speak up
to
louder.
ask
Right into
you.
the microphone.
Okay, sorry. I think something that's very present in the Mexican culture is like a lot of surrealism, a lot of mysticism, and can you talk about like where does this come from? Where does this initiate in our culture?
If you go to the Mexican National Museum and look at the gods of the Aztecs, the Coatlicue, for example, mother goddess, she is she's absolutely alien to human representation, because there is a mystical or religious conviction that the gods are not men and women, that they are different. Therefore, you have the mother goddess of the Aztecs. It's a huge statue with a skirt of serpents, with a very strange head, which is not a head at all. Everything is unnatural in her. There is nothing that resembles a human being, because gods are not supposed to resemble human beings. This is a Greek idea, and it's a wonderful idea. The Greeks say that the gods are human, the humans can be gods. In Mexico, we said, no, the gods are not human, they have to be inhuman, which creates an art that had a political purpose at the beginning, during the Aztec regime, but then it ceases to have that import and becomes a work of art. And how these great statues, these great works of the past cease to have a religious meaning and have an aesthetic meaning, that is the secret of art, the secret of aesthetics, that finally the work achieves its full meaning with time. And it is devoided of its original purposes, whatever these may be, through the fact that it is an aesthetic event. And in the measure that it is an aesthetic event, it survives time, and it survives politics.
Wow, we love that. I mean, thank you, Carlos. I always wanted to understand that, and now I understand where the surrealism exactly comes from. Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Blair Harshbarger, and I'm a junior here at the college. We've recently heard that Hugo Chavez presented President Obama with a book, The Open Veins of Latin America, and my question for you is, if you could give President Obama any book of your choosing, what would it be?
Nice question.
Well, I'm afraid for one thing that Hugo Chavez gave Obama a very old-fashioned book, a book that was written 30 years ago that is not up to date and will give Obama a very false idea of Latin America. I think I would give Obama the best book of our language is Don Quixote de la Mancha. I think every leader in the world should read this. I know Bill Clinton read it because he and Garcia Marquez and Bill Rose Styron's house, we talked about the Quixote. And Clinton seemed to know it chapter by chapter, which was very surprising. So when do you read, Mr. President? He said, after midnight. From midnight to 2, I read serious books and detective stories. Good for him, to at least have 2 hours. But that is, I think, the greatest book in the Spanish language, the greatest book our imagination has produced, and I would put it in the hands of every head of state so that he or she understand the broader aspects of life, what madness means, what ambition means, what glory means, what reality has to offer you, how you can fall on your face very easily from a horse, and how your servants are better than you think they are. Yeah? Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Martin Lajou. I'm a student at the School of Public Health. And thinking back on Artemio Cruz, would you tell us a little bit about your view on death?
On death?
On death.
Yeah. I mean, we live and we have hopes, and we exercise freedom to the extent that we can. We work, we create works of art, or we do business, we do the things we do, we love, we make love, we have children, we marry, we do all the things we do, but always there is the consciousness that it will end in death, that death is the inevitable end of our lives. And a country or a community or an individual that does not understand this is in for a big shock, to say the least. I think Mexico is a country where we are very conscious of death. We celebrate El Día de los Muertos. There is, in our painting, in our literature, a constant reminder, not of death as something separate from life, but as life encompassing life and death. And the fact that you know that from the Aztec world, there was no heaven or hell. There was a place you went to when you died, called Mictlan. And it was a place, well, more or less nice. Spring was there all the time. It's got flowers. But you didn't go to hell. This is a very radical invention of the Christian world, that you should go to heaven or hell or purgatory. But what we do know, what we do have conscience of, is that we are going to die. And therefore, what do we do of our lives? And the fact that all the values we attach to life are real values, even if we face death. While we live, we must pursue these values in the knowledge that they will survive us. The values will survive, we will go. It's not easy, but it's that way.
Carlos, is there, it's a question that I, precisely because I was around September 11th and was surrounded by so much death for an entire year of my life as a reporter at CNN. So what about the fear of death? What does one do with the fear?
Well, it's part of living. You cannot live in fear of death. You must fear death because it is fearful to think that your own life is going to end, but you cannot live in fear of death because then you would be paralyzed. You would do nothing. We wouldn't be talking here. We'd be hiding somewhere in a basement, fearing death would come and we can avoid it by hiding. We can't. So we are conscious of it. We live with it. And out of the idea of death, the consciousness of death, have come great plays, great poems, great novels, great music, great paintings. So viva la muerte in that sense.
Que viva la muerte, yes.
Hello, my name is Moise Cherem. I'm a student here at the Kennedy School. And as a young Mexican, I'm very concerned about the lack of true political leadership in the country. So are there any individuals that you believe have the necessary values and capacity to effect positive change in Mexico?
We're in one of those stages in Mexican life where you see a dearth of political leadership. You're right. And if you're hoping for some miracle to happen from our governments or parties, I think we'll be disillusioned. I mean, they're competent people, they're good people, they're not great leaders. But, you know, Mexico has a reserve of leadership, which, when it feels it has a vacuum, it appears. These men are called Emiliano Zapata, who was a peasant. They're called Álvaro Obregón, who was a farmer. They're called Calles, who was a teacher in a school in Sonora. And suddenly when there is a void of leadership, these people, zoom, appear. And I'm sure there are a lot of people waiting in Mexico to assume leadership if things go too wrong. Right now they're not that wrong, and we can live with a rather mediocre leadership. And lack of personalities in the parties, in Congress, in government, etc. But be sure that if something approaching a catastrophe happens in Mexico, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news or bad prophecies, but listen. 1810, Mexico has Revolution of Independence. 1910, it has the Mexican Revolution. I don't want to say more. I don't want to say more.
Híjoles, oh my God, just one more thing to worry about. Okay, gracias. Up there.
Yes, my name is Sofia Jarnin. I'm from Ecuador, an independent journalist, and I do community radio. My question for you is, you talk about the immortality of art and how it supersedes politics and it supersedes death and how it's the values that survive. What would you say is politics any good? That's what I'm asking. What would you say is the good of politics?
We've been working at a humane politics forever. I think there is a big break with Greece. It is really Greece that invents the notion of a citizen that can have a voice. The Asian empires did not accept citizens. There were Assyrians, there were Egyptians, there were Babylonians, and they stepped on anybody, and that was power. But Greece admits that there are citizens and they have a say in the ways of the state. And this is the origin of democratic politics in the West, which has the long life of Greece. It has been suppressed. It always rises up because I think it is inherent in the human soul to look for a place in the city, to influence the affairs of the city, and to have greater and greater degrees of freedom. This has never failed in the worst tyrannical regimes. You see that there is a light of someone searching for freedom, many people searching for freedom. The darkest days of tyranny, which I think is the Hitler regime, especially in Germany, or the Soviet regime of Stalin, you'll see so many people fighting for freedom, writing, being killed, being sent to concentration camps because of the belief in freedom. And I think there's a constant light that guides us. And when we become comfortable and forget this, I think we're in trouble. We have to resuscitate the idea that, as I said a while ago to Maria, we're in a constant search of freedom. We never achieve it constantly, but to fight for freedom is the definition of freedom.
Yes.
Daniel Tapia from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Some decades ago, talented Mexican leader Jose Vasconcelos implemented a policy to build libraries in the rural areas and to extend the interest of arts and literature in Mexico. Yeah. Currently, I think that the education and the promotion of arts and literature are in an impasse. What do you think about that?
I think you're right. I think that we need a new Vasconcelos, or at least a policy comparable to Vasconcelos's, to further the education, the creation of libraries, the offer of books, the alphabetization of the illiterate Mexicans as the basic component of what we've been talking about, a progress for Mexico, a development for Mexico that is inseparable from the education Mexicans get. The more educated Mexicans are, the more they will work towards a more stable, prosperous, and democratic country. So I think to put the stress on education and have a new education campaign comparable to Vasconcelos, I think is one of the planks of any modern leader in Mexico. If I were running for president, I would run on the education plank. I would not win, but I would vote. But I would propose it. Anyway.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Peter Kahn. I'm a fellow at the Radcliffe Institute.
Yes.
One of the challenges facing Mexico, you said, is injustice. What role does the Catholic Church play in that struggle?
Well, Mexico has several Catholic churches. Mm-hmm. The Catholic Church is very different according to countries. And in Mexico, you have, as in many other countries, a hierarchy, and then priests that work at a more social level. The Mexican Revolution of Independence was headed by two priests, Hidalgo and Morelos. They were both priests, and Matamoros, who came from Spain. So they were the revolutionary leaders, and they were beheaded and killed by the royal authorities because of their insurrection. So there is a tradition of a priesthood that works for the people, and that exists in Mexico. And it exists, I think, throughout Latin America. There's also a hierarchy that tends to be indifferent, but the fact is that there's a good part of the clergy. And what the hell? You're dealing with a country that is 90% Catholic. Hmm? I think that in Mexico, even atheists are Catholics. There's no way to avoid it. Who doesn't love the Virgin of Guadalupe? If you say you don't love the Virgin of Guadalupe, you better pack and go or you'll be murdered. So you have a Catholic culture in Mexico. Hmm? There's a Catholic culture with a vast infusion of pre-Columbian sacralities that come from the Indian world. But basically it is a Catholic Christian culture, which is one of the central facts of Mexican life. Whether you like it or not, there it is. And all the wars against religion have failed in Mexico. The Calles regime in the 20s tried to ban the church, close churches, ban the priesthood. It only hurt itself. So we have to have a policy of coexistence, even those of us who are, what did Woody Allen say? My mother is an atheist, and my father is what? Agnostic. Therefore, there's a crisis in my family. We're fighting each other all the time. These are the two different tendencies of mom and dad. Well, whatever, I think we are conscious that we live in a Catholic culture and that we work within that culture, even as we try to respect the laws of the state, the laws that are not religious laws. They should not be religious laws. Religion should have its place. It should not dominate politics. This is a vast struggle of the Mexican people because up till the wars of reform with Benito Juarez in the 1850s, there was a great dominance of the church in all affairs of public life. We've had a great struggle to eliminate that, put the church in its place, and let the state and politics and society run themselves without religious interference.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Gloria Coronado, and I'm here with the National Hispana Leadership Program. And you mentioned earlier that oil was one of the pillars of the Mexican economy. Yeah. And from all reports in the U.S., energy is our next big global crisis, and I think that we're more prepared than ever to deal with it because there's now a greater consciousness about global issues. Mm. How do you see Mexico preparing for the energy crisis, and what do you see as kind of their role in that global crisis that seems to be imminent?
This is a very complicated issue because there is a kind of political sacrality surrounding oil in Mexico. Since this was a great struggle in 1938 of President Cardenas to nationalize oil, it has become sacred. You cannot admit foreign investment or alliances of any kind. Lula has made great efforts to cooperate with Mexico and to have joint ventures with Pemex, the Mexican oil monopoly, but they've gone nowhere. So we have this problem of having resources of oil that, frankly, I have to say, are not properly exploited because politics will not let us exploit them fully. So there should be an arrangement by which oil is the property of the nation, the subsoil belongs to the nation, and the nation has a privilege of a prime interest in upholding that, but it can delegate many of the aspects of the distribution and the exploitation of oil to private companies. We should come to an arrangement of that kind. Right now it is impossible because of political considerations, but I think that eventually we will have to accept this in view of what you're saying. The oil crisis is becoming universal. The price of oil is going to fall steeply. This is going to hurt the Mexican economy, and we'd better come up with solutions for the short and long run, and we're not doing it sufficiently.
You're back for the follow-up.
So un poco cabezota.
We like persistence. Okay.
Okay. So my previous question was...
He's a good penny.
Is he?
He's a good penny.
Well, I'm actually writing a paper, and I would really need to talk to you for 10 minutes. But
What did you say?
so, I mean, if you promise me 10 minutes, I'm going to sit down. So, so the previous question was actually about the past. And the next one would be more about the present and the future. So my question would be, what are you reading right now? And also, what do you think about the future of literature in connection to the internet? And especially, this increasing movement among many authors that actually want to escape publicity in the internet, and they're actually trying to hide themselves behind names or actually anonymity. And to what extent we would be able to claim that maybe we're actually going back to pre-modern literature, meaning that literature that didn't have an author, but just somebody who was from a certain region or area. So yeah.
All right. Is that it? Let me tell you, I don't have any of these machines. It's my wife who takes care of that and tells me the news or whatever, because I know you can become entranced by that little screen and do nothing all day except punch and look at the screen and don't do your work. No, I write. She looks at the screen sometimes in the evening and tells me, hey, this is news and this is not news. But I will not be a slave to this screen. As a matter of fact, I read 3 newspapers. I read I'm in Europe, I read the International Herald Tribune, which is the Post and the Times. I read El País, which is our Spanish language newspaper. I read the Financial Times of London, which has the best information about Latin America. And I read them all before I go to bed when 80% of the news is no longer relevant. So that is the way to deal with information about what one is writing. Never ask a writer that question, because if he or she answers, they won't write the book. They will have answered your question, but the book will be unwritten. The book is a secret. While it is being written, you can talk about previous books you have published. Never talk about the book you're writing. It's a mystery. You yourself don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I have a plan for tomorrow. I sit down and say, tomorrow I'm writing this chapter. Bing, bang, boom, these are the characters, situations. Go to sleep. Get up in the morning. I am a morning writer, like Sergio Ramirez. And I sit down and something completely different comes out. What has happened? The subconscious, dreams, I don't know. Something happens that changes the course of your writing. So you can't interfere with that. There is a magical element in writing, which is the glory of writing, really. The fact that you yourself do not know what is going to happen tomorrow, even if you think so. So don't ask me about what I'm writing, because I don't know, really. In a deeper sense, I don't know. Huh?
What are you reading?
Oh, I am reading a very good younger Mexican writer called Álvaro Enrique, who has written a novel called Vidas Perpendiculares. And this is a story about a young boy in Guadalajara who's considered rather idiotic. He doesn't speak, he goes around. But this young man is living lives at the same time of St. Paul in Palestine, in ancient India, in the dawn of time with animal hunters. In Naples, he's an inquisitor in Naples. He has all the things he can imagine he can be, and he's not very aware of it, but the author says this is happening to him, and we must believe the author. I think this is a part of a crop of new Mexican writers, very good Mexican writers, part of this bevy of Latin American writers that I'm talking about. There is a very good Colombian writer called Juan Gabriel Vázquez, whom I have read recently, and who has a novel, what's it called, Silvia? La novela de Juan Gabriel Vázquez, which is an answer to Conrad's Costaguana novel on Colombia. And this is a man who writes, there's a man here who says, now we must do the Panama Canal. It's the only thing to be done. And he imagines what the construction would be, what the canal would be like, and he tells this to Joseph Conrad in England. And suddenly there's a novel called Nostromo, and the Colombian writer says, you've stolen my novel. He said, no, you have your novel, I have my novel, and forget about it. Nobody steals anything. Write your novel, don't complain about it. So, I mean, there's a bevy of, it's a very rich period of Latin American literature. You can read many, many younger writers who are 45 years or less. They're appearing in all our countries, as I say, as a response to the lack of political and economic leadership or the crisis of these economic and political institutions. The great response seems to be writing, enormous quantity of very good writing. How many Mexican novelists are published in the United States? I don't know, maybe 2 or 3. In France, as I said, 47. There is a great response all over the world to what we are doing, and I think that is very gratifying.
Yes.
My name is Juan Carlos Iragorri. I am the U.S. correspondent of Semana, a Colombian news magazine.
Yeah.
Don Carlos, my question is, do you think you deserve the Nobel Prize?
No, of course not. No way. Kafka didn't get it, why should I?
Yes.
My name is Joel Yuen, and I am a student in chemical physics. I enjoy your books a lot, like especially La Frontera de Cristal. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about why you decide to write many of your novels in this like collage of short stories, or like your style.
What is the question? I don't get it.
Why do you decide to write your novels as collections of
Well, sometimes, you know, the novel form is Bertian. You can do a novel in 1,000 ways or a short story in 1,000 ways. As Sergio Ramirez was saying before in another meeting, the short story has to be short. You can't get away with it if it's long or lengthy and it has subplots and too many characters. It has to be very much to the point. But one way of getting around that demand of the short story is to join a number of short stories. And in the case of my latest novel, it is published in this country, it's done through choruses. You have stories that tell a tale, and then between each story you have a chorus of those who do not have a voice, demanding a voice and giving it a certain unity, so that it goes beyond the short story to become a choral novel, if you wish. So, I mean, the literary forms are very malleable. You can use them in many ways and transform them, twist them around, straighten them out. They're almost like chewing gum. So we can do a lot of things with narrative, more than we imagine, actually.
Thank you. Yes.
Don Carlos, buenas noches y gracias por estar aquí. My name is Jesus Acuña. I study in the public policy program in this school, and I'm from Hermosillo.
Sonora.
What do you think is the problem in Mexican politics? The institutions or the men and women in those institutions?
Both. I think the institutions have become old. The party system is not functioning well. We should have 2 parties, not 3, fighting each other and creating voids. We should have in a modern sense, we should have a Christian Democratic Party on the right and a Social Democratic Party on the left. To have 2 great formations and do away with splinter parties and rivalries and all the things that are an obstacle right now to Mexican politics. So we need a great reform of the Mexican party system. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime, but I certainly hope it becomes a modern party system. And a modern party system supposes a Christian Democratic Party and a Social Democratic Party, as happens in Britain in many places.
So I've been told that we have 2 more questions. Your question number 1 and your question number 2. So for the rest of you, sorry about that, but we've got a time issue, so go ahead.
Hello, my name is Christian Rubalcaba, and I'm a graduate student here at Harvard. And my question to you is, in your view, what do you think differentiates the literary culture in Mexico from the literary culture here in the US?
Well, it's in another language to begin with. And that makes a big difference, big difference. You know, I speak English, obviously, but I can't write in English. And I can't make love in English. As you well know. And I can't insult in English. I mean, all the insults in English just slide off of me, but hijo de la chingada makes me very angry. So that's because it's my language. It's my language, and it's the language I write in. And when I see the way, for example, a writer I admire very much, Philip Roth, the way he uses the English language in an American context, I say, I could never do that. And when I tried to write in English, sometimes for the hell of it, I heard a tinkling of the chandelier, and it was old Henry James sitting there saying, and a curtain rustling. It's Faulkner saying, you can't do that, you can't do that. So I write within my tradition, which is that of the Spanish language, where I feel comfortable. I can innovate, I can be as traditional as I want, I can be as revolutionary as I want, I can do anything I want with a language that is in my blood. It's in my mind, it's in my genes, it's in my sex, it's in everything. And that's the only language that has that power over me. The other languages I learn and I can use, and I can ask for a dinner or a taxi to take me somewhere, but I cannot write a book. There you are.
Thank you, yes. Last question, and then I have one last one.
Okay.
Oh, that's going to be the, esa va a ser la dura, ¿no?
Buenas tardes, don Carlos. Con todo respeto, don Carlos. Mi nombre es Teresa Alonso, and I am with the National Hispana Leadership Institute here at Harvard. And my question is, we have, with the Latino community, we have the largest dropout rate in the nation. Over
Harvard?
50%, we do. And my question is, because I'm an educator, what recommendations do you have for the
How many
Obama? What recommendations do you have for the Obama administration to help with the with the dropout rate?
I really can't counsel the Obama administration. You're asking me an impossible question. I wouldn't dare come up with a suggestion, especially about a subject that I don't know well.
Maybe you can answer the question of what would you, if you had a dreamo vision of how to make schools in the United States appealing to young Latino students, what would be that vision that you would have?
No, I think they should be judged on their merits, not on their ancestry. Yeah. I mean, they're good Latino students and they're bad Latino students. They're bad and good Protestant students. They're good and bad WASP students. There is equality. I don't believe in quotas because of race or nationality. I think the people should be admitted on their merits. And don't tell me that Latinos are ignorant or idiotic or no. They are up there with the best. And they should compete with the best and be admitted on that basis, not on any other basis, I think.
So, thank you for your question. So, Carlos, I just wonder, what's, and it's actually la más fácil, the easiest one.
At last, you're making an easy question.
I was writing down some of the things that you've experienced in your life.
Yeah.
You know, exile, censorship, the death of your children, not being denied a visa to this country. And I just wondered, so with all of this history, and I love the fact that you're the same age as my father, who is un doctor mexicano, investigación de otorrino, but what is the thing that makes you the happiest? What should you're such a grand intellectual, everybody here sees that, we feel it, pero en los momentos de más tristeza, or in the moments cuando estás débil, or what is the thing that makes you the happiest that you can also share on us? You know, don't be overwhelmed with the computers and the this and that, which is me. What is it that
Well, you know, it's the same as you. We have the same value. It's love. That's it.
puramente.
Of course. It's the greatest value in human life. And then all the rest is secondary to that.
But when you become such a huge
No, I don't
person,
worry. I don't
no,
worry
no,
about
but
that.
I know, but it makes it also, you know, it's like it's not easy to be loved by so many. It's loved by a few.
No, it's the quality of my love, whom I love. I mean, I don't care about being loved. I'm worried about loving and the quality of my loving. My wife, my children, my friends, that is what I mean by love. I don't expect my love to be returned. That would be vanity. I'm not a movie star. But I do want to share my love with the people I love, starting with my wife, with my children, with my friends. And that gives me the greatest pleasure in life, and that is the basis of all the rest I do. Without that, I would be a very somber person and not sitting here with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.